Shalom. Baruchim Habaim. Hello, peace, and welcome to Biblical Hebrew Chapter 2, where we jump into vowels. Now, vowels are those sounds that we make that are unimpeded by our mouths, where air flows freely, like A, E, I, O, U. Vowels are not represented with Hebrew consonants or letters. They received other kinds of symbols at a later date. And in fact, there's two different systems of Hebrew vowels. In the Josberger-Coutts textbook on page 11 and on, in chapter 2, you can see that they do explain a bit about the length of vowels and about the historical development of vowels. And that's where we'll start here. So our agenda for today is, number one, what are the vowels in Hebrew? Number two, to talk about the three lengths of vowels, that there are short, long, and schwa. That's a fun thing to say. Go ahead and say it with me. Schwa. A schwa is a very short vowel, almost a swallowed vowel, like the vowel at the beginning of because. When I say, I mean, I could say because, but no one really says that. People say because. That's a schwa, the because. But very, very, very short vowel. And sometimes we even don't really pronounce the vowel. So that's just like in Hebrew. So we have short vowels, long vowels, and schwas. Then we'll have vocal markers. That is, letters that act like vowels. In English, we say A, E, I, O, U are the vowels, and sometimes Y. Y is a consonant. The letter Y in English is a consonant that acts like a vowel sometimes. So it's a helping vowel. Well, they have those same things in Hebrew. And in fact, they're the oldest vowels that they have in Hebrew, the vowel markers. And lastly, we'll get to the strange schwa, that short vowel, the ultra short vowel, the strange and mysterious kamets, this one vowel that acts differently, and the secret life of the dagesh. Remember the dagesh, that dot that we put into letters to make a soft or spirant? Well, there's a little bit more to that dagesh, and that'll actually spill into the next lesson too, where we talk about Hebrew syllables. So, in any event, here we go to vowels. In the beginning, God created the consonants. That is, Hebrew started out, the very earliest Hebrew that was written, just like the other languages around it that were written, these northwest Semitic languages like Moabite and Ammonite and Edomite and Phoenician and Canaanite, Ugaritic, these languages that surrounded ancient Israel, were all written with only consonants. They did not have vowels in them. And in fact, no language in the world had vowels in it at that point when Hebrew started to be written down. Vowels are actually a strange thing to write down. So the people heard those hard sounds, the consonants, and they wrote those. And the vowels they just kind of added by memory, or they kind of figured it out what people would have been saying. So here we have an image on the screen this is the beginning of the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 1, from the great Isaiah scroll from Qumran. Qumran is a place that held what is now known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Qumran is a place just next to the Dead Sea and contains the oldest biblical texts, really the oldest library of biblical texts that we know of. This copy is from right around the time of Jesus. It was written around the time of Jesus, and it contains the entire book of Isaiah. This is just a little snapshot of it, of course. But just to say, this has no vowels in it yet. The vowels that we're going to learn today aren't in this, except for some of those helper vowels. But we'll get to those in a minute. But the vowels had to be invented. This is the exact same bit of text, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1. This is from the Leningrad Codex, that earliest full version of the Hebrew Bible that was kind of bound like a book. Codex means a book, by the way, the book form. Before that, they had scrolls, of course. Couldn't make a scroll with the whole Bible on it. It'd be too big to roll it up like that. So, in any event, you can see here, these are the letters. This is a chet that you learned, and a zayin, chaz, and then this is a vav, and this is a final nun, chazon, and then Yeshayahu, Isaiah, so the vision of Isaiah. Ben Amos, the son of Amos. Amos is Isaiah's dad's name, Asher, which is the exact same things down here. So this is Chazon, Yeshayahu, the vision of Isaiah. Bain, son of Amos. Can you see the aleph here? Can you see the mem here in the Qumran text? Can you see the Vav here. Can you see the final form Tzadeh here? This is Amotz, Isaiah's dad's name. And this is Asher, Aleph, Shin, Resh. And you can see up here, same thing. So here's the Aleph, Mem, Vav, and Tzadeh. This is the name Amos, Isaiah's dad's name. And this is Asher, which... Okay, so you can see, though, that there's other things that have been added. These things below and above the line. Some of these are little markers for the scribes, and some of these are vowels. The vowels get added in later. These vowels actually get added in the Middle Ages, right around the year 600 AD or CE. CE means the Common Era or the Christian Era. That just means after the time of Jesus. So 600 AD or CE, these were invented. There were a couple of different systems at first that were invented. You can see this on page 13 of your textbook, of your Learning Biblical Hebrew Kutz-Josberger textbook. You can see on table 2.1 there were different vowel systems that were added. At this point in time, scribes didn't want to add extra letters. They didn't want to invent vowel letters and add them in the medieval period, in the Middle Ages, because at that point they believed that the consonants were holy and that they would be messing up a holy text if they added extra letters in. Now, at an earlier point in the history of the development of Hebrew, and you can see this on page 12, around the time of Jesus, the letters weren't actually considered holy yet to that point. The letters of the Bible were considered like a prompt for you to be able to speak and recite these things out loud. And so they actually didn't have problems adding in extra vowel letters. We'll get to what those are exactly in a minute, but just to say, we're dealing with 3 different stages in time. The earliest stage in time was absolutely no vowels whatsoever. Think like back in the time of Moses, there were no vowels at all in Hebrew. At the time of Jesus, they had invented some letters that were helper vowels. And then at the time of, let's say, the early church, Jewish scribes were busy inventing different methods of adding vowels as points and lines above and underneath the letters so as not to disturb the letters, because by that time they were considered to be too holy to be changed or added to or taken away from. So, all to say, between the 6th century and the 8th century, these scribes, particular scribes called Masoretes, these were the scribes that lived in the land of Israel and elsewhere too, but were trained in the land of Israel, and they learned this system of copying very carefully these texts, and they learned these developed vowel systems and really all sorts of interpretive stuff that we'll get to when we get to our exegesis or interpretation classes. So on top there, you can see like how I'm going to have Hebrew written in this class, and you can see it's kind of there's better spacing and so on from the manuscripts. A little bit of lightning there. So this is Isaiah chapter 1 verse 1. Chatzon Yeshayahu ben Amotz asher chaza al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. The vision of Isaiah the son of Amoz, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. So, how do you read without vowels? I mean, think about ancient Israel. Before the time of Jesus, before they had vowels, when they were the Old Testament was actually being written. How in the world did they do that? Well, it's actually not as hard as you might think. What do you see here? Now, maybe that's now Yerk Cootie, but it's probably not, right? Yeah, you could probably guess that that's New York City, because you're already familiar with New York City because it's one of the biggest cities in the world. And when you see this pattern of consonants, your brain can fill in what you expect to be there. Now, you might be wrong, but probably not going to be. Now, what you think this is? Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Yeah, there's the city of Jerusalem. I just put it there without vowels. And this is a place called the Flying Biscuit. If you're not from Atlanta, you've never heard of this place. But if you're from Atlanta, you've driven by this place. It's a breakfast place. It's a place you can buy, you can get food there any time of day, but it's a famous breakfast place. Now, I put this one in there because you might not be from Atlanta. You might not be familiar enough with the flying biscuit to be able to pick it out when there's no vowels there. This is true of me when I read ancient Hebrew. I'm not familiar enough with the culture and the language and the experience, the lived experience of ancient Israel to be able to pick out all of the Bible, let's say, without vowels. So the vowels are there to help me really where I've lost something, where I don't know what the people who were writing the book knew. That's why we think vowels came in later. They came in later when later generations of individuals who were reading the Bible began to say, I don't get it. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this refers to anymore. So they had to add the vowels in. Here's perhaps a famous example. Another person who lived in Atlanta, grew up in Atlanta, and this is Martin Luther King. And we might add a junior there, but yeah, Martin Luther King. So you can kind of guess a lot of these, especially if you have the special cultural knowledge that would allow you to guess what these things are. So first part of this lesson, we'll say, how do we identify vowels? We'll talk about those 3 classes and 3 links. We'll talk about the vowel helpers. We got that other added stuff afterwards as well. So where are the vowels in this? This is another rendition of Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1. Chatzon Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu, by the way, is the name Isaiah. Yeshayahu. Then Amos. By the way, Yeshayahu is pretty much the same as Yeshua, right? Which is Jesus' name, which is really Joshua, which is really salvation. So this is salvation is of Yahu, which is a short version of the name Yahweh, which is God's name in the God of Israel. So Yahweh is salvation. So in any event, that's Isaiah's name. Good thing that's his name because that goes along with his message really well, that God is the Savior. So in any event, vision of Isaiah, Ben Amos, and you can see that all of the dots and dashes and things that have been rendered in green. There's a couple of things missing. There's a little I here. That was another little clap of lightning that was pretty close by as I'm recording this. Sorry. But you can see this little I in here. It's the little vowel here that will fit in later. But in any event, you can see these dots and dashes and so on. These are all of the vowels. And they're placed above sometimes. This one's above here. It goes above the line. And sometimes they're below the line. Mostly they're below the line. You can see these different vowels here. And sometimes they're in between. Like there's a yod right there. You just memorized that. Or this is a vav. Or this is a funny vav with a dagesh in it, right? We'll get to these too. The letters that are in green, those are helper vowels. And the dots and dashes that you don't recognize, those are the vowel signs. So there's an important thing you can actually see here, which is that every single letter in Hebrew gets a vowel is associated with a vowel. Hebrew, like other Semitic languages, doesn't like consonant clusters. They don't like it when you got a bunch of different consonants in a row. Other languages, like, in English, you can have a bunch of consonants in a row. You kind of stack them up together and kind of just sound them out one by one. But in Hebrew, they like to have a vowel in between each one. So here's how we would read this. We would start with this letter. This is a chet. Remember our chet here. It's closed. It's not open, so no breath gets out, right? And here's a zayin here. And then here's a noon. So our first word is chet zayin noon, which is it means basically to see something, to have a vision. And we have this vowel underneath and then a vowel over here. So you can see it. We read it like this. And there's a little diagram in Kutz-Josberger that shows you this kind of direction of reading on page 14. So you start here with the consonant, and then you go down to the vowel, then you go to a consonant, then you go to a vowel, then you go to a consonant. So chatzon, and then yahu, then Amos. So this is the kind of direction that we run. Okay, so I know you don't know any of those vowels yet. We'll get to those in just a minute. So these 3 links of vowels, and I'll teach them to you in terms of these links. You can see a diagram kind of like this on page 13. Kutz and Josberger don't add the schwa in at first. They kind of give that to you later. On page 15, there's another table of these short and long vowels. The schwas come in later in Kutz and Josberger. I'd give them to you all at the same time. There's short, there's long, and then there's these super short or schwa vowels. So here are our vowels. some people like to put these in different classes, like the A vowels, the I vowels, the E vowels. That's fine too. You can see on page 15 of Coutts and Joesberger, they've got a table 2.2, that has A-class vowels, I-class vowels, and U-class vowels. That's helpful. So I got that same thing here. On the top here, we've got the E and I. This is the I-class vowels. Oops. These are the I-class vowels up here, E and I vowels at the top. And then we have the A vowel here in the middle. And then we have the O and U, both of which would be considered U-class vowels in Coutts and Joesberger. Some people will call these O-class vowels. It doesn't really matter. But there's basically 3 different ways you can make your mouth. So E and I, you can kind of make that sound, E or I, and you can just see how your mouth is shaped. It's big, it's open, it's round. And then there's A, which is different from E and I. And then there's O or U, and notice you got rounded lips and things like that. So these are actually real classes of vowels that correspond to different ways that you hold your mouth, no matter what language you're speaking, these EI, A, and OU class vowels. Okay, but they're also short. These ones that I'm teaching you now are short vowels. That means they get like kind of one beat. So these are they. We have on the left here a bait with a dagesh in it, so that just makes a B sound. This is just a consonant that's there just to kind of show you a consonant. It doesn't matter what consonant this is. This could be Zion, it could be Hey, it could be Resh. It doesn't matter. We've just got a bait here. People often have that here. Why not use Aleph? Well, because it's a glottal stop, so it's a sound, right? So we're going to start with the first fully recognizable consonant in the alphabet and use that as a sample letter. So in the Coutts Joesberger book, they've got a little box. That box represents any letter, right? I've put a bait in there for you here. So this bait, and when you got these 3 dots, like an upside down pyramid, that's the symbol right there. You got to remember the symbol. And then the name of it is segel. And the names of these vowels are, the names of these vowels, the first vowel sound is the sound that the vowel makes. So segel, like B and bet, like the E, like the E sound in bet, And when we transliterate this, we just give it a regular English E. Segel. Upside down triangle is a segel. This next letter just has 1 dot underneath it. And this is the chirek. E. Chirek. Bit. I. It's like a I sound, Chirek. Bit. The way I like to think of this is it's an I-class vowel. It's a short I vowel. And I just think of this like the top of an I. That's the dot. I'm just going to imagine there's a little I coming down underneath that dot, right? 1 dot. That's how you make an I. That's also how you make a chirek. Okay, next is the short vowel patach. It's just a little line underneath your consonant. So here's a bait with a dagesh, and here's your little your little patach there. Your little patach, it's your short A-class vowel. Patach, bat, it can be or a. Bat is maybe a little, it's about right. We actually don't know exactly how these vowels would have been pronounced in the ancient world. That's kind of a mystery in some ways, but we think, based on tradition and continuity, the way it's been pronounced by people who have been able to read Hebrew throughout the centuries, there's something like or a. So a short A-class vowel, represented with an A. The next one is a kibbutz. Kibbutz. Now, I know I said that these are the first letter of the word, but this is actually kind of a rare vowel, and there aren't that many words with it, in fact. So this is actually the second vowel in this word is the one that is depicted here and is the one we're talking about. The kibbutz, it's an U vowel, U. There aren't, like I said, not that many U vowels. We'll see kibbutzes from time to time. And kibbutz, if you've ever heard of a kibbutz, it's like if people say I'm going to the kibbutz in Israel, what they mean is that they're going to a collective farm. So kibbutz means a collective. So see these 3 little dots here all in a line, like they're in a little collective together, huh? And that makes the U sound, like bull, kibbutz, kibbutz, yeah. So here is the last of our short vowels. This is called the kametz chatuf. This is like a T. It does not make a T sound. It makes an O sound, a short O sound. ah, like body, ah. So the kametz chatuf makes this ah sound. It's actually the sound in ah tuf chatuf. Body, ba, ba. This little symbol is going to come back to haunt us, actually. So watch out for that last one there. But these are our short vowels. Most of them are uncomplicated. From time to time, a hirek can be a long vowel, but it almost never is. So just treat it as a short vowel. So let's do a little bit of practice here. All right, just follow along with me. I know that you're somewhere. You're not here at the same time as me. You're not experiencing the thunderstorm that I'm experiencing right now. It doesn't matter where you are. Get over the kind of awkwardness of this and just dive in. Try to read these out loud with me. I'm going to wait a minute, just a beat, and then I'm going to jump in after you and try to help you. So you try to go first. I see a tzadeh, I see a dalet, and I see a kof. And these are segels, those short E-class vowels. Now you might be asking yourself, what's this weird little symbol up here? That's a stress marker. It's telling you where to stress a vowel. In every language we have stress. You don't say the same syllable, every syllable at exactly the same level of stress. You always put your stress somewhere in your word. So like if I say government, I'm putting the stress on ment. If I put the stress on the first syllable there, it would be government. But notice I don't say government, I say government, or whatever. So that's just telling you where the stress is. The stress is important in Hebrew, and we'll get to that in a couple of lessons. But just for now, whenever you see that, just know that this is pronounced tzedek. Now look at this here. There's your tzadeh, that's a tz sound. Here's your segol, that's a eh. Then you have a dalet, and a segol, and a kof. Tzedek. Tzedek. See how that works? Tzedek. Let's try this one. Here's an ayin. Looks a little bit like your tzadeh, but it doesn't have the same kind of bendiness. This is your ayin, so it starts with this guttural sound. And then here's a hirek, which is your short I. And then here's a meme. M. This is a final form meme here. So im. Im. Which means with. Tzedek, by the way, means righteousness. And im means with. This is very similar. You start with an ayin and you're ending with a final form meme. Exact same letters, except your vowel is different. If you look, this is your patach. This is your short A-class vowel, which, if you put this together, you say am, which means people, a people. All right, so next, this is a gimel here. Sorry, this is a gimel here. The gimel has a dagesh in it, so it's a g sound, a hard g sound. It's got a kibbutz underneath it, and there's a lamed at the end. Remember, lamed is the one that goes above the line. So pronounce this, it's gul. Gul, which means a wave. All right, so those are our short vowels. You can go back and take a look at Kutz-Josberger or so on. And here are our long vowels. We're moving on to our long vowels now. And our first long vowel is our I-class vowel. I and E class is kind of combined as one. So our I class or E class or IE class, whatever you want to call it, vowel that is long is our tsere. Tsere. The sound it makes is like bay, like A. It's like a long E. Tsere. Tsere. It's got two. Think about like if you have a long E, right? A in English. It sounds a little bit like an A, right? But a long A is an ah sound. So in any event, you have these two dots next to each other, and that's the tsere, the long E. Next we have this bait here with the dagesh, that's just our standing consonant again, and then we have our vowel underneath, which is a kametz. Now, you might be rubbing your eyes right now, saying, I don't believe it. Because if you go back to the short vowels, you'll see that, unfortunately, this is the exact same symbol used for the short O vowel, called a kametz chatuf. There's another name, kametz katon, that Kutz and Josberger use. There's actually two different names for this short vowel that takes this, so kametz katon or kametz chatuf. This short kametz, this is the long kametz. They make two different sounds. So the short version of the vowel makes like an O, and the long version of the vowel makes this long A. So if you see this, it could mean ah, like bat, ah, this long A vowel. Now, how in the world can you tell them apart? Well, we will get to that later. Do not worry. Next, we've got a bait. It looks like my chart got a little cut off here, but there should be a dot right here over the bait, right where my mouse pointer is. This red dot should be right here. And that is a holum, which makes an O sound, long O. So this right here is bow, just like the English word bow. So in any event, those are your long vowels. So your comments, so your tsere up here, your tsere, your comments, and your holum. Those are your long vowels. You also can have other long vowels made by helpers, which we will get to in just a minute. The hirik and the kibbutz, like I said, they can function as long vowels, but just treat them as short vowels for now. Don't worry about it. Now, I told you to wait for a minute to talk about this repeated sign. Now's the time. What in the world are we doing with this kametz and this kametz chatuf or kametz katon? There's this short version of this vowel and a long version, and they actually sound kind of different. What in the world? The Masoretes, the people who made and invented these vowel symbols, I wish they had just come up with that. Maybe they ran out of sort of creativity, right? You ever do that where like the last you got one more hour for your project and you gotta get it in? Maybe they just ran out of symbols. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know exactly why they copied this symbol twice. But there are some ways that we can actually tell it apart when we see it. How do we know if that symbol, the little T underneath your consonant, is a kametz, a long vowel, which makes it long A vowel, or a kametz katon, or kametz katuf, a short O vowel? We're going to come to that, all right? So don't worry about it for now. The way you're going to be able to tell is what kind of syllable it's in. And that's for the next lesson. So, for now, just trust me, guess that it's a long A vowel, if you see that. Just guess that it's a long A vowel. In time, I'm going to teach you some tips on finding the somewhat rare words that use that as an O vowel. We'll get to it. But for now, just guess A. Guess the long A vowel. Guess the kametz. So, here we're going to do a couple exercises. Here we have a yod, and here we have a kametz, and here we have a dalet. So the yod makes a y sound, the kametz makes a sound, and the dalet makes a d sound. So that means that we would get yad. This is the Hebrew word for hand, by the way, a yad. Chok, we have a chet, we have a holum, and we have a kof. The cholim is the O vowel, so chok. Chok. Here we have a bait, and then underneath we have those two dots in a line. Not three dots in a line going down, two dots in a line going horizontally. This is a tsere. So ba-ein. That's a final form noon there. Bain. Bain, which means son, really son of. So Isaiah ben Amoz, Isaiah, the son of Amoz. David, this is a name that you know. Dalet, kametz, vav, hirek, the I vowel, and dalet. Da, v, id. David. David, David. That's David's name right there, which really means beloved one. So here's another little chart. You've got another chart in Joesberger on page 15. I'll put another chart up on the Moodle site. You can cut these charts lots of different ways and kind of arrange the material different ways. Find one that works for you and just stick with it, copy it, work with it, etc. So here is our Hebrew vowel chart. We have our short A-class vowel, our patach, the line underneath. We have our long A-class vowel, our kametz, our little T underneath our consonant. For our I and E-class vowels, we have short E, that's a segol, a long E, that's a tsere, and a almost always short I, that is the hirek. Sometimes a long I too. You'll notice that in transliteration, the long vowels get this little line over them. It just shows that they're long. That's true for any language when you want to put it in transliteration to show the phonetic values, the values that you pronounce. Long vowels get these long lines on them. For our O and U class vowels, we've got the kibbutz and our long holum. And then we also have this tricky one right here. Remember, it's the same image, the same little symbol, this little T looking thing. It's the same symbol for our long A and our short O. As I said, just guess the long A at first, and really for a very long time. You're going to learn some particular vocabulary and some particular words and some particular patterns that make it clear when to use these two, but just guess A for now. Now we're going to talk about the really short vowels, or the schwas. Any language can have schwas in them. Most languages do. English has schwas. Like I said at the beginning of the word because. That's not really a long vowel there, because. It's a swallowed vowel or a hyper short vowel. You can even think of it as a missing vowel, because. You can even say it without the vowel. So in English, that's what we would say. These sounds occur in Hebrew as well. And this vowel is represented, this kind of swallowed vowel, represented by two dots going straight down in a line. That's what we say a schwa, and that's the name of that vowel, the schwa. The sound it makes like is a, like in because, and it's transliterated with this E with like a little circle, a half circle on top of it. The half circle is there to show that it's a schwa. This is the same in English if you were to show a schwa somewhere, or for lots of other languages. There is an interesting thing about Hebrew where that same symbol can sometimes represent nothing, because these short vowels are almost nothing, right? But we can actually tell different places and times where they would have pronounced a little thing here, like a little vowel, and there are times where they wouldn't have said anything. We know this in part from the rules of the language and how people spoke it. So you can see that the Masoretes here really were using the same symbol to do two different things. And you will be able to tell the difference here, to tell these two things apart. On page 16 and 17, Kutz and Josberger go through the rules for figuring out how to tell if it's a silent schwa. This one down here would mean silent. It would mean don't say anything. And a vocal schwa, which up here is one that you actually make a little noise for. Now, why in the world would the Masoretes do this? The Masoretes were really worried about people adding in letters to the Bible and adding in even sounds or words into the Bible. So they used this swallowed vowel to show when there wasn't anything written underneath a word, or there shouldn't be anything written underneath a word, underneath a particular letter. So they didn't want to have gaps. They didn't want to have spaces that someone else could fill in with other things. So they used this schwa there to mark it. And they remembered the difference between these two things, but of course, we don't necessarily know them, so we'll have to learn. So here, there's a couple of rules that we're going to talk about in a minute, but just to show you this in action, this is the word r. Here's a hirak, e. Here's a yod, barit. Barit. So barit means covenant. This is the word that means covenant, by the way, which means just like a deal. Any kind of deal is a covenant. In the ancient world, it wasn't a particularly theological word. Actually, it wasn't a theological word at all outside of Israel. It just meant like a deal or a business deal or an agreement, a barit. So in any event, barit, you see that schwa underneath there, that gets a little it gets a little noise, a little vowel. That's a schwa. It's a vocal schwa. Vocal meaning you say it, you pronounce it. Barit. This is a very different word right here. This starts with the meme, mal. Here's your patak, your short A, mal. Here's your lamed, the line breaker. Mal ach. This schwa right here underneath the lamed, that is a silent schwa. So barit, that's a vocal schwa. Mal ach, that's a silent schwa. Now, how could you tell the difference? Well, there are some ways that Kutz and Josberger have. We'll go through a couple of those, but just hold on a minute. Just trust me here that this is a silent schwa, and that this is how I'd write that. I would even ignore it, because the Masoretes were just trying to get you to make sure that you didn't add an extra vowel underneath there, because they didn't think that would be right. So malach, by the way, malach means messenger, and it's also the only word in Hebrew for angel. The word for angels in Hebrew is messenger. So in any event, they're like God's messengers. So these half vowels, again, how are we going to know if it's silent or vocal? We're going to have to learn a little bit about syllables to really get all of the details about this. But if you want to get a jump on it, begin looking at pages 16 and 17 and all the way to 19 in Coutts and Joesberger. They've got a bunch of rules there that please read them and try to understand them. I'm going to come back to you and get these to you. I'm going to explain them again later, but it makes a lot more sense if you read through some of these explanations before we get to them next. So please take a look at that. Okay, another thing that we got to talk about are these vowel markers. These kind of these letters that are helpers. You can see these on page 22 through 24 on Coutts and Joesberger's chapter, pages 22 through 24 in Learning Biblical Hebrew. These vowel markers are consonants that play the role of vowels to be able to help. And we do this in English as well. So the word pay, the Y there kind of helps you make the vowel sound, or they, or paw, or so, or sigh, or though. You ever thought it was weird that there's a G in sigh? It's not sig, right? Anyone who learns English as a second language and reads this says, where's the G sound? Well, GH together at the end of a word create a helper, vowel helper. Helps you read the vowel. Sigh. Or W can be a vowel helper. Paw. You don't say pow. It's just trying to get you to influence how you say that vowel. Well, the same thing happens in Hebrew. So just like in English, some consonants can help vowels make their sound or mark how a vowel makes its sound. In Hebrew, a similar phenomenon occurs. These vowel marking consonants are often called matres lectionis, or mothers of reading, like they help birth the reading, if that makes sense. It's a bit of a strange analogy, I know, but just think of it as kind of a midwife, right? Someone who assists in the production of this life. And actually, the rabbis believed that the vowels were sacred, not in the same way that the consonants were sacred in the text and holy, but they believed that the vowels were holy because that was where breath entered into the letters of the text. And it's also the part where human beings enter in by adding them. That is, we have to put the vowels and our own breath into the reading in order to come up with the reading itself. So in that way, these helper vowels are trying to help birth the reading and the interpretation that we will make of this sacred text. So it's kind of cool if you think about it that way. At least I think so. But that Latin term, matres lectionis, or mothers of reading, you'll see that written in textbooks and written in commentaries and things like this. It's a mater or it's a matres. Oh, these are matres. These are just know that that's a word that's associated with these helper vowels. Okay, Hebrew vowel markers. There's 3 of them. There's hey, right, the H sound. There's yod, the y sound, and there is the vav, or the v sound. When a vowel helper appears, the vowel is always considered long. There are no short vowels associated with these vowel helpers, or these vowel markers. If we're going to transliterate those vowels, we use what's called a circumflex. It's kind of like a little upside down V, a little caret kind of on top of the vowel letter. Okay, so how would this possibly work? Like I said, you can read some things without the vowels, like this. I've heard this a lot from my children over the last 10 years. Da, 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 dee, dee, daddy, I need to go pee-pee, right? So if I wanted to make this clearer, I might add a Y there, right? Or, daddy, I need to go pee-pee, right? That might actually help you kind of make sense of that, even though that's not how I'd write it in English. But if you had no vowels in English, this might be what you do here. Or, wait a minute, is it this? Daddy, I need to go poo-poo. So those are 2 very different things, right? But just to say, what vowel marker or vowel helper that we put in the word will actually change the way that we read it or the way that we sound it out. That's true of Hebrew too. So remember, like I said at the very beginning, at first Hebrew has no vowels. So time of Moses, there's no vowels written down in Hebrew. Between 700 and 500 BC, we've got these matres lectionis, or vowel markers, or vowel helpers, these consonants that act like vowels, and that's when they were invented, and they were in constant use up through the time of Jesus. But then in the medieval period, between 500 and 900 CE or AD, the development of the vowel systems began, including this Masoretic system, the one that we're using today. We're using the Tiberian Masoretic system. Tiberias was a city in Palestine. So in any event, this is one of those systems, and that's taken over as the one that everyone uses now. So just to show you kind of when these different things developed. So what we're going to talk about right now is that stuff that was invented like around the time of Isaiah, like around the time of like Elijah. I mean, it's crazy, right? But like, this is when we're talking like these vowel helpers were first invented for people to read stuff that had been written down long before and kind of forgotten. So now the Masoretes have added in vowel markers, like actual dots that have filled in and connected with these ancient vowel helpers. So what we're looking at is a system that's been built together over time in stages. It's kind of a cool thing if you kind of think about the history of this. We're reading like it's like an archaeological dig. We're looking at like a layer cake of history when we look at these vowels. So in any event, we've got the hirek, this like I class vowel, right? If you have a hirek and then a yod that comes right after that, we'd say that this yod here is helping with this vowel. The yod is helping with the hirek. And we say it all kind of functions together as like one long hirek yod. So hirek is the name of that vowel, and yod is the name of the letter. So we just stick them together, hirek yod. And it makes a long I vowel, long I sound, E, B, or something like that, right? So you can see that it's transliterated with an I with a circumflex on top. All these have these circumflexes on top, these kind of like little upside down V's. That's just showing you it's a super long vowel. So be, we have a tsere yod, so hirek yod or tsere yod. You can also have a cholam vav. This is interesting to us because we're not actually pronouncing the consonant here. These are just consonant helpers, just like the English word paw. I don't really pronounce the W very clearly. So in the same way here, this cholam, see it's a cholam, but it's sitting right on top of my vav. My vav has been turned into just the letter O. So if I saw these two letters in Hebrew, the way I would read this is bow, bow. And it sounds like the English word bow. This doesn't mean the English word bow, by the way, but in any event. Then our next vowel is the shurek. That's the name of it, shurek, because it's got this long U. Shurek, ooh, ooh. It makes an ooh. So if you notice, these different vowel helpers are associated with different classes of vowels. The yod is associated with the IE class. The vav is associated with the OU class. Bo, and this is boo. Bo, the cholam vav, and boo, the shurek. And you'll notice that the hey is associated with the A class. So ba, comets, hey. So if you see a comets, and then you that long A vowel, and then you see hey right after it, you're looking at a comets hey. It kind of functions as one big long thing. You don't make the H sound. You don't go bah. You just say bah. So in any event, this is an interesting and strange perhaps way to think about a language. But again, you're going to get used to this. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And like I said, it's strange. It's unusual to have two different vowel systems working at the exact same time within a language that was originally not written with vowels. However, it's really cool that when you read your Bible, you're actually reading stuff from very ancient times, stuff from the time of Jesus, and stuff from the medieval period, all there together on the page. It's a living tradition. Scripture has always been alive, and that's what I take away from these layered vowels. So like I said, these vowel markers don't have to be there. Some words can be spelled with them, and some words can be spelled without them, and sometimes the same word can be spelled both with them and without them. Maybe you have seen like writing from the early modern period, like before there were dictionaries and things like that. I mean, people would spell things in pretty creative ways. There wasn't very clear spelling rules until the modern period in many languages. In ancient Hebrew, you could spell things a bunch of different ways. they had a much more regular way of spelling than English had in ancient, before the modern period. But one of the things that in Hebrew that there are some differences in spelling are if they have these vowel markers or they don't. That is, a word, you could spell a word with it or without it. If they've got all these vowel markers, it's called a full spelling. If they don't have the vowel markers, they just have the Masoretic dots and lines. It's called a defective spelling, which is a terrible thing to call it. I'm sorry, but that's just what they call it. So the Latin word for full is plane, and the Latin word for defective is defectiva. So you can you'll see this in all sorts of things. This is spelled plane, or this is spelled full. They mean it just has the vowel helpers or vowel markers in it, or this is spelled defectively. That doesn't mean it's a bad spelling. It just means it doesn't have all the extra vowel helpers in it. Now, why is that defective? I don't know. I didn't come up with that at all, and I would change it if I could. But I'm not in charge of Hebrew, so I'm just teaching it to you. Whether a word is full or defective does not affect its meaning. So vowel markers don't really matter for the meaning of a word. They can help you with the interpretation of it, and they helped many people throughout history with the interpretation of it, though. So here's one example of what I mean. To say full spelling and defective spelling don't really matter to the meaning of a word. So here's a word, da. Notice it's a dalet and then a comets there, da, and then a vav followed by a hirek yod and then a dalet, David. Ah, that's David. David's name also appears as David with no yod. These are both David's name. David's name is sometimes spelled with the yod. David's name is sometimes spelled without the yod. Sometimes the same verse as it's spelled two different ways. They would maybe add the full spelling if they thought it might be misinterpreted as something else. The word David can mean beloved, so maybe they think it might mean something. So we don't know exactly why the Masoretes, why the scribes or the pre-Masorete, the scribes of around the time of Jesus, even before, why would they add the extra consonants, these vowel helpers? Why would they add them sometimes but not add them other times? We really don't know. But what we do know is we can read these words both ways. Okay, so here's another one, kochav. Notice we have start with a kaf. It's got the stop in it, so it makes a ka sound. Notice we have a vav with a holam on top. That makes a holam vav. That's our vowel. It's just one big long O vowel. And then we have a kaf with no dagesh in it, so it's a spirant. And then we have underneath that a comets, and then we have a bait that is also a spirant. It's not a stop. So kochav. That will also sometimes appear as kochav with a holam instead of a holam vav. Remember, the vav was just there to show you that was supposed to be a holam. Now, what does kochav mean? It means star. So when you talk about the stars, when you want to talk about the Balaam's oracle, his prophecy and Numbers, when he prophesies about the one who will come basically like the star, that's understood to be a prophecy of David within Jewish tradition. But so that's the bar kokba, the son of the star. That's this word right here. So in event, kochav can be spelled both ways. So join me in a little bit of practice here. We're just going to sound these things out together. So notice that we've got here a kof, and we've got a holam vav, and we've got a lamed. So if I'm going to put this all together, it's a k, o, ol. So that's kol, which means voice or thunder, which I heard some of just earlier. You may be able to hear some on this recording. It's thunderstorming right now where I am. So kol. Here's another one. This is a sheen or seen, but remember, sheen is always right, and it's on the dot's on the right. So this is a sh. And then this is a shurek here, a u vowel, shuv. This is a bait with no dagesh in it, so it makes a va sound, shuv. Here we have a bait with a dagesh in it, a ba sound. Here we have a tsere and a yod, so a tsere yod, and then a tav. This tav has no dagesh in it, but I don't make a difference in pronunciation between a tav with a dagesh in it or not anymore. Modern speakers of Hebrew don't do that, so they just say it all t. So, bait. Bait. By the way, kol means voice or thunder, sound. Shuv means to turn around. It can mean to repent. Bait means a house. It's also the letter bait, right? So here's another sheen or seen. She is always right. So it's a sh. Here's a hirek and a yod. So together those make the sound e, sheer. And a resh at the end, sheer. Shir, which means song. Shir hasharim means song of songs. Okay, so how do we know if that schwa is vocal or silent? Now, like I said, some of these rules will make a lot more sense once we get to what's called syllabification, or how we understand syllables. That is how pieces of words are made. But for now, we're going to jump into a couple of these different possibilities. So let's solve the schwa. Okay, if the schwa is on the first letter of a word, it is vocal. That means you have to say it. If a schwa is on the first letter of a word, you have to say it. You have to say it out loud. It's got to be vocal. So here's a word, starts with a sheen. She is always right, sheen. And this is our schwa underneath. Here's a bait with a dagesh in it. Here's a kametz and a hey. Sh-ba. You gotta say it. You can't say shba. I mean, you could say that, but Hebrew doesn't like that. Hebrew doesn't like having two consonants together. They like having vowels between their letters. So, sh-ba. Shaba. If a schwa comes immediately after a long vowel, it is vocal. Okay, check this one out here. This is an ayin, so a sound. This is a holum, so it makes an o sound. This is a zayin. Here's a schwa, and then here's a bait with no dagesh in it, and a tsere and a yod. So oz ve. But it could be oz be, oz ve. Is it oz ve or is it oz ve? Oz ve. How are we going to say it? Well, if a schwa comes immediately after a long vowel, it's vocal. Remember holum, that's our long o vowel. O, z, ve. Vocal means you say it. So if it has a long vowel, o, z, ve. So this is o, z, ve, not oz, ve. Now, why does that matter? It actually can matter in terms of what you read and how you interpret it. So, learn this stuff because this could change how you preach a text. So, if a schwa comes immediately after a short vowel, it is silent. Here's an example of what I mean. Kir ya. This is a kof. Here's a hirek. Here's a resh. Here's a schwa. Here's a yod. Here's a kametz. Here's a hey. Ki ra ya or kir ya. Which one is it? Is it a silent schwa, kir ya, or is it a vocal schwa, ki ra ya? Well, if a schwa comes immediately after a short vowel, remember hirek, I said treat it as a short vowel. If it comes after a short vowel, it's silent. So kir ya. Kir ya. Now I thought you said that Hebrew doesn't like consonant clusters, right? Well, it's not a consonant cluster, it's the end of a syllable. Now I said we'll get to syllables next time, so this will make a lot more sense later, but you need this introduction now. Hebrew does, when we teach Hebrew, we need to do a lot of this, which means you introduce something a little bit and then you introduce more of it later, and it makes more sense. But you gotta have the first part to build on it. So there's another rule about the schwa. When two schwas appear back to back, this is always gonna be true. The first is silent, the second is vocal. So this yeah, sh. Here we have a sheen here. Is it she is always right? Yish, ma, ru. So here we have a couple of different rules we can put into place. This here is short. So after a short vowel, it's silent. Yish, ma, ru. This rule, when two schwas appear back to back, the first is silent, the second is vocal. Silent, and then vocal. Yishmaru. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, take a look at Kutz and Josberger and their discussion about the complexities of sounding out the schwas on pages 16 through 19. And maybe that'll make sense too. But we'll come back to this exact thing also next lesson when we talk about syllables. So, remember I said we're going to put this off for another time. We're going to come to it. How do we finally, let's just go ahead and do this. Like I said, this will also make more sense when we talk about syllables. But we're going to get into it now. How do we know if that little T symbol that's underneath our consonant is a kametz, an A-class vowel, or a kametz chatuf, or as Kutz and Josberger call it, a kametz katon, a short O. How do we know if this is an A or an O? Let's solve it. This T-shaped vowel indicates a short O, or a kametz katon, or a kametz chatuf, if it's followed by a schwa. So here's our schwa. So we're going to start with this chet. Here's a kametz. Here's a kaf. Here's a schwa. Here's a mem, a kametz, and a hey. But is this a kametz or a kametz katon? Is it an A or an O? Well, it's a short vowel if it's followed by a schwa. So how would we pronounce this if it's an O, a short O? Chochma. Chochma. This word's important to me because this is the word for wisdom and for woman wisdom, who, according to Proverbs chapter 8, verses 22 through 31, created the very world. So, chochma. A T-shaped vowel like this, up here, indicates a long A in pretty much all other cases. So, this word here, da, here's a dalet with a dagesh in it, so da, var. This is a bait, but there's no dagesh in it, so it's going to make that little v sound. Davar. This word means word. Davar means word. So this is a pretty important one. We're going to come across this. It can also mean like thing or even matter, like this affair. Like what's the word? So davar can mean a lot of different things, but mostly means word. This is an A vowel here. Davar. So if you see this T-shaped vowel followed by a schwa, get very suspicious and start to make that O sound. Like I said, this is fairly rare. Guess A. Just guess an A-class vowel when you come across that. Sometimes the Masoretes wanted to make sure that you knew that this was an A vowel, not an O vowel. When they did that, they added this little thing to it. It's called a bridle, or a metheg is the Hebrew word for that. But here's the bridle right here, like for a horse. You know, like it's kind of like a bit in the horse's mouth. This is the bridle here, and it keeps the A long. They put it there kind of randomly. I mean, it's not always there when you want it to be there to help you figure it out. But so this is the word for word. But let's say that for some reason that this vowel is a schwa here. They might put the metheg or the bridle here just to tell you, well, you might think that this is a short O vowel, but we're going to put that thing there just so you know. So if you ever see this right here, the T with a little I before it looks like it, right? If you ever see that, you're looking at an A-class vowel. The Masoretes are trying to help you. Those scribes are trying to help you by giving you additional clues as to what this is. That's always an A. So daber. That's what that is. Daber. All right. This is our last thing for today. We're going to talk about the dagesh a bit. So if you take a look at Kutz and Josberger, this is pages 20 and 21, and it goes on to the beginning of 22. 2021. So pages 20 and 21 of your textbook have some of this there. They go into a little bit of a rule, the Skin and Levi rule. I don't really get into that too much, so don't worry about that. There's some things in the textbook that I don't focus on as much. That's just my choice. But anyway, let's remind ourselves of the dagesh here. Remember, the dagesh is that dot that appears in the bagad kafat letters. Why do we call it bagad kafat letters? Because b, g, d, k, p, t, bagad kafat. These are the only letters in which a dagesh, this little dot in there, will turn these letters from a spirant into a stop. If you have the dagesh in there, they're a stop. If you don't have the dagesh there, it's a spirant, right? So remember that from our first lesson of the alphabet. But the dagesh can also appear in non-Begad letters. That means any letter can take a dagesh. It just does something different. So let's say a mem right here, or a lamed, or a nun, or a tet. These can all have dageshes in them. In these cases, if the dagesh is in a non-Begad kapat letter, remember our Begad letters, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, Tav. If it's in a letter other than those, what that means is that you've got two of those letters, is that those letters are doubled. Let me say that again. If you have a dagesh in a non-Begad letter, that means that the letter is doubled. If you see a mem with a dot in it, that means you got two mems on your hands. If you see a lamed with a dagesh in it, you got two lameds on your hands. They just only wrote one, and then they told you later that there were two of them by putting a dot in it. Does that make sense? So it's automatically doubling the letter. So if you're going to read this, here's an ayin with a kibbutz underneath it. So it's oo. And then here's a zayin with a dagesh in it. It's got the dagesh right there. Z, ah. Utza. Now the kibbutz is a short vowel, so utza. Utza. Got doubled. Here's another example here. Re, here's a resh and a hirek. Re, and then you have a mem with a dagesh in it. Rima. Rima. Kind of hang on that mem a little bit longer than you would otherwise. So a dagesh in a Begad letter is often telling you that it has turned into a stop, just like I taught you. But there's another thing that it can mean. Oh yes, it can mean that it's doubled too. Or it can mean that it's not doubled, that it's just turning a stop into aspirant. So here we see one of the complexities of Hebrew. A dagesh in a Begad kapat letter, b-g-d-k-p-t, might indicate a doubled stop. That is, it's turned into a stop. So, like bait, it can be the blah or it can be ba. Well, it can be that, but it also could be doubled. There could be two of them there. So the name Zerubbabel, here it is written in Hebrew, Zerubbabel. This is the governor that was sent back to help rebuild Jerusalem, and there's some prophecies about Zerubbabel. There's some pretty interesting stuff out there on the internet if you Google Zerubbabel. I don't agree with, I don't think any of it. But anyway, Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel. This right here, this bait is a stop, and it's doubled. There's actually two of them there. Now, how do I know there's two of them there? We're going to get to that next time when we talk about syllables. Just trust me that there's two of them there right now. There got to be two of them right there because otherwise Hebrew wouldn't work. But Zerubbabel. This is a doubled letter, and it is turning a stop into a spiral. If you see a dagesh in a Begad kafat letter, it has to be a stop. You can't double aspirant. It just doesn't happen. So it's at least giving it a stop. It might also be doubling the letter. Does that make sense? So if you see a dagesh in a zayin or in a lamed or in a mem, then there's two of them. If you see it in a bait, maybe it's just telling you that it's a stop, or it might be telling you that it's a stop and it's doubled. Those are your two options. This is if it's a stop in a Begad letter and it's doubling it, it's called a strong dagesh, or dagesh forte. Again, we're using Latinate words here. For some reason, people who study Hebrew grammar do this quite a bit. They speak in Latin a bit. So I'm sorry that there's some Latin terms we're going to use from time to time. And there's some Hebrew terms we're going to use from time to time, and English. So it's always a party when you're studying languages. But this is a strong dagesh, or a dagesh forte. You can see this is on page 20, the second half of page 20 in Kutz and Josberger. Aspirant just can't be doubled, so don't worry about it. But there's also the dagesh lene, or the weak dagesh. So in a non-Begad letter, the dagesh indicates just the letters doubled. That's it. A lamed with a dagesh in it, there's two lameds there. In a Begad letter, the dagesh indicates a regular stop if the vowel before it is long. Now, these are some rules that I don't even remember anymore. You don't have to memorize these letters, or these rules that we're talking about right now. You got to memorize the letters for sure. You don't have to memorize the rules that I'm talking about right now. Some people operate much better if they have a lot of these rules under their fingertips. Some people, like me, don't operate well with all these rules. I just forget them right away. But you know what? I'm an intuitive learner. I pick up on these things after just being immersed in it for some time. But not everyone's like that. Some people are deductive and like to have rules that are very clear and planned and spelled out. So for your rule folks, this is one of the rules. You can always tell in a Begabficat letter that a dagesh indicates just a stop if the vowel before it is long. Sha, bar. I'm going to explain more of this next time when we get to syllables. All right? So just hang with me. Sha, bar. That's just one B there, one bait. In a Begabficat letter, a dagesh indicates a doubled stop. That is, it's strong or forte. It's got both stops and doubling if the vowel before it is short. Shibar. This has got two baits in it. You don't see them. There's just one, right? But that dagesh is making a stop and it's making a doubling. It's a dagesh forte, strong dagesh. So we would call this a weak dagesh up here, just making a stop. This is a strong dagesh, making a stop and doubling it. The weak dagesh is sometimes called the dagesh lene. That you'll see that at the top of page 20 in Kutz and Josberger as well. Sorry, but I'm always going to use just doubling or stop. That's what I'm going to talk about. That's the language that I use. And by the way, we won't really talk about this all that much, but it is something you need to have as kind of foundational for a lot of figuring out how to pronounce Hebrew. Okay, so congratulations, you've made it to thund. We're going to have to add the vowels in later, I guess. A couple of helper vowels in there to help you, though. But in any event, congratulations, you have finished your bit about vowels, and there's a lot in there, I know, I'm sorry, but now you can get up and reading, and you can pronounce anything, really, in Hebrew now. The hard part is actually figuring out what you've just said, right? But now that you know the alphabet and now that you know the vowels, you know all of the sounds that Hebrew can make. And you can make them too. So next time, we're going to come back and talk about syllables. And we'll be able to kind of decode a bit more of how Hebrew is supposed to flow, how the flow of the language works.